Previously on the True Blue Challenge, I tuned the NSX to match machines from the tuning village, ignored the dangers of drowsy driving and paid the price, saved the championship, and headed westwards with a Corvette. With that had been said, I welcome you back to the world of Gran Turismo. With a purebred race car hailing from the United States, I've gotten both access and confidence to challenge the All-American Championship. Like the Tuning Car Cup, this championship consists of 5 sets of races. However, a distinct difference is placed in the selection of tracks, fitting to the theme of the championship. All 5 tracks we're about to race in are placed in America. The prize of winning the entire tournament is 35 grand. Not a very abundant amount, but hey, I got a car, why not try it out, right? The first race is set on the streets of Seattle. The opponents for my Camaro this time around are a Viper, a C5 Corvette, and you. They did say all American cars, but you got quite a nerve, don't you? That ancient Corvette aside, we also got even more serious contenders, such as the Chaparral 2D and the... It's fine, Strakes. You're on even ground now. If anything, your car should be better than that menace this time. You got this. A rolling start meant I get to hit the gas last. Not ideal, but my Camaro will pull through. Turn 2 and already I've almost bricked the run. Never mind that, as I bore witness to a conflict between the Red Viper and the C2. Whatever beef they had with each other had given me the advantage to do a double overtake and landed myself on the 4th place. I went easy with the throttles to anticipate the upcoming corner as I tailed the yellow Corvette. A tactic proved successful as I've gotten myself a spot on the podium right at the apex of the corner. Now then, my opponents are the Chaparral and the GT40. I cleanly took the Chaparral out of silver medal and closed in on the GT40. Under the tunnels, the GT40's run for first had gone under, replaced by me. On the second lap, an attempt was made by the Ford to retake the golden trophy, but alas, the walls guarding the hairpin stopped him. I made quite a daring approach in the corner after taking on hairpin and thought I could get away flirting with the curbs. However, the car made a skip and overworked the rear tires. On turn 9, I tried to graze the curbs once more, but this time, it sent my car flying. Had I not yanked the steering wheel to the left, that would have introduced me quite harshly into the walls. This drove me to play cautiously on turn 10, which brought desirable results. I thought I made the right call on the corner, only to find myself almost kissing the wall. I sped up and braced myself toward the next set of corners, but yanked the wheel too early, and as a result, I got pinballed across the walls, giving the opportunity needed by the GT40 to apply some pressure. On the 3rd lap, for some reason, the GT40 was quite disgruntled and slammed me right before the hairpin. Perhaps he was quite upset he cannot cheat by bringing a car that's clearly above the maximum allowed horsepower into the race. Quite rude to take that out on me though. I boldly took on the 5th turn and continued to grow the distance by taking both turns 6 and 7 with a level-headed racing line. However, the same could not be said for turn 9, as running through the curb almost sent my car flying far enough to hit the walls. Here comes my favorite part of this entire layout, the straights. Only when I drive the better car though. If this was a 150 points race or something, the straight section sucks. I took note on the 100-meter sign and braked, took on the corners well, and before I knew it, I was once again under the building. I gracefully dealt with a set of final corners and entered lap 4 after recording a personal best. This time, the gap between me and the GT40 had been well established. All I had to do was to drive cleanly, avoid major mistakes to cross the finish line before everyone else. I exerted more control on turn 5 and slowed down quite significantly for turn 10 in order to not be sent flying by the curves. This time, I remembered there's a tram rail in the middle of the road, so I slowed down to minimize unwanted airtime. This helped me in taking the next set of corners better compared to the laps before. Quite a mistake on this corner though, as a harsh re-entry caused quite the wheel spin. Despite the smoothness on this lap, I was a tad slower. I noticed that the front wheels had turned lime instead of green, a telltale sign of wear and tear. This could have led to a decrease in performance, which explains the lack of record braking on the penultimate lap. Still, they have yet to go for yellow, and I still have full confidence in my tires. perhaps too much, as the curves could have ended entire tournament run then and there had I spun out. I heeded the warnings and took to the remainder of the circuit with care. The goal was to be as close as possible to the curves without actually climbing on them, something I achieved on the set of corners before the long straights. Even if I had climbed the curves, I slowed myself down to avoid the car flying out of control. The yellow tires are starting to be even more worn out, but the end of this race was near. I preserved and earned my first victory in this tournament. 7 minutes and 40 seconds of driving. At least thanks to this race, I now get a rough idea on how long these medium racing tires could last. The second round was set on a harder version of the Invincible Raceway. Another rolling start, quite a disadvantage, but I believe my Camaro's performance and my experience with this track will be more than enough to secure victory. On the first set of corners, I opted to play it safe and held my hand against the Viper, but worry not, for that red Dodge won't last very long in front of me. I took the insides and climbed 2 spots. The older Corvette was what barricaded me from P3, but unfortunately, he missed the cue and was sent eating grass. Hey, that's dangerous re-entry you're attempting. Pay attention! With the extras done and dealt with, it was time to play with the actual big boys of the race. On the blind corner, I controlled the throttle and smoothly took the turn. On the hairpin, the chaparral was true. The wavy set of corners came up next. After I cleanly dispatched them, my gap with the Ford became close. Right before the end of the first lap, I've wrestled the golden trophy away from the Ford, something that he clearly was not a fan of. The steep change in elevation caused quite the understeer, which forced me to slow down in order to be spared from the grass waiting on the side. Overconfidence struck once more as I turned too early on the corner, causing the curb hill to send me flying. A lesson I learned by the next corner. I arrived at the blind corner and remained in the middle. While the execution around the hairpin was smooth, the exit could do some work to avoid that unnecessary wheel spin. The wavy corners were dealt with, and so was the final hairpin of the lap. Again, on the same spot, sudden understeer struck and caused me to slow down. Apparently, that did not disturb the solid lead I had against my rivals. Unlike the previous lap, I took that corner with caution and succeeded in not hiccuping through the track. I exited the corner better this time too, surely. I'm experienced enough to no! Phew, could have been worse, and the gap allowed a safe re-entry while maintaining P1. Okay, that is not my fault. You can't spin that on me. The GT40 slapped my rear end full speed while I'm already back in the racing line. Regardless on whose fault that was, we were back, neck and neck to determine the victor. I steeled myself through the pressure and executed a well-thought turn on the hairpin before the wavy corners, rode the waves fairly fine, slowed down in time before the final hairpin, and smoothly exited the corner into lap 4. On lap 4, I expected a loss of grip on the hill climb, so I slowed down beforehand and maintained the grip levels, allowing a smooth execution on the turn. I almost choked on that blind corner, but it's fine, the gap that once was lost had been rebuilt. And right on cue, the tires had begun to show signs of wear and tear, another challenge I would have to go through to win this 5-lap race. Apparently, on the final lap, I'd forgotten how to correctly take that corner and went upwards the curb, which was not a good move. I can really feel the reduction of grip on the blind corner, and another early turn which caused yet another problem with the curb. Ooh, that was close. It's alright, Strakes, only the final hairpin remaining, and you'll be bringing that trophy home. Phew, glad that's done and dusted with. Also, was that just me? Or did the tires go yellow at the end there? These are racing mediums I'm racing with, mind you. The third round was set on the heart of the Big Apple itself, New York. With a clean and totally fair move, I overtook the Viper. Used the speed I got from a better line to take the Corvette's position over before the straights, where I obliterated the older Chevrolet in a contest of power. The silver Corvette was quite ambitious, but he had forgotten to take into account the existence of the walls serving as the limits of the street track, leading to quite the fail of the round as I continued to stalk the white chaparral. I overtook the chaparral, fairly, and set my sights on the GT40. I've heard some opinions on consecutive 90-degree corners. Well, in my opinion, this is quite preferable over some continuous blind corners, as at the very least with these turns, I can determine the apexes and act accordingly. I controlled my throttle down the square hairpin and kept a close range against the GT. the roundabout came up, and with a proper throttle control, I managed to get around it without any issue. Right after I entered the second lap, I powered over the GT40, but just like before, he gave me quite the unwelcome speed boost right before the hairpin. While it looked like this childish behavior actually worked this time around, the Ford GT40 forgot he was treading over dangerous curves, which destabilized the car and allowed me to reclaim first. As for the second contest of power, the GT actually kept up, not bad. The consecutive 90-degree turns came up, and I thought I did well until the hairpin, where I turned too early and bumped the rails. That mattered little, as the straights allowed me to build quite the momentary gap against the Ford. That was lap 2 and into the third lap. I used the 100-meter mark to brake and smoothly go over the hairpin, another speed section, another 100-meter mark, and a well-timed brake allowed me to negotiate through the sharp corners ideally. I learned my lessons this time and, well, guess not. 200 meters and brake! I stayed practically on the flat curves around the roundabout and sped into the fourth and final lap. A well-timed brake towards the hairpin, which led to a smooth turning experience. Just before the 100-meter mark, I braked and negotiated with a 90-degree corner. Could have gone better had I not go up the curbs. This time, the tires looked greener at the latter parts of the race, and I didn't feel a reduction in grip whatsoever. This was reinforced by the personal best I have recorded at the end of this race, and of course, the golden trophy that I have seeked. Based from this track, I think 4-lap races is quite the sweet spot for racing mediums. Next round. As someone who screwed himself up in a tuned NSX before, this track did not exactly bring good memories. But here we are, at least this time I'm far from drowsy and is driving a Camaro fitted for racing. This time, it's a grid start, the proper way to start a race. That's what I believed until this absolutely questionable launch. Looks like the Viper got quite the amazing launch, but that mattered little. I had a Corvette and a Chaparral to deal with first. After quickly dealing with both of them, I grazed the Viper with my presence and took his spot. The old Corvette did not last very long either, and before I knew it, it was time to have a proper duel with the Ford. I controlled my throttle down the corner and remained close towards the Ford's rear. I thought I could squeeze through, but reality is often disappointing. I shoot my shot for the second time, but the GT remained in first. The problem was, I tried to take the GT off-road, when this is an on-road race. Quite a bad habit I must cut off. After the hairpin, I had finally seen the gap I could use, and I'd gone for it. Oh, I remember that hill. Alright, this should be enough to ow. Why? Wait, no, stop the wheel spin, no! Whew, could have gone bad, like really bad. I slowed down on the slope and cautiously took the set of turns. I remained close to the curbs on the hairpin and zoomed into the second lap. The rather steep change in elevation did not help my case and turned my car sharper than expected. I carefully navigated through the corners and navigated through the hairpin well. This time, I appropriately slowed down before the hill, and for the first time in forever, I managed that turn without bumping off the wall. I've also learned to not step on the gas on the steep downhill section, allowing the car to roll down without excessive wheel spin. A tidy approach on the hairpin and into lap 3 with a divine gap. I let go of the accelerator once more once I realized 2 of my wheels were no longer on the asphalt, avoiding a fatal spin out. I navigated the corner well and entered the hairpin from a vantage point. The steep changes of elevation came up and I carefully treaded along, which made for a safe, smooth experience. Another smooth execution around the hairpin and into the final lap. This time, everything went smooth at the start. I have experienced how this track worked and how to navigate through it properly. Smooth turn on the hairpin and it slowed this car enough to avoid understeering into the wall. I noticed the lime on the tire indicator and decided to not push the car too hard this time. Unfortunately, the tire's loss of grip made quite a contribution in understeering on the final hairpin. Fortunately, I still scored a win on the track. At that point, I was leading the tournament with a solid 40 points. It was time for the final round, which was held in a track much smaller and simpler, Laguna Seca. Race has barely started and already the GT40 is that far gone. This is gonna be fun. I tailed the Chaparral with speed, but remembered the corkscrew and slowed down. I tried stepping on the gas on the downhill, but the wheel spin quickly indicated that was a horrible idea. So, I delayed that until I was stable. On the final straight of the lap, I have managed to close that big advantage the GT40 had built. After the first hairpin, I managed to encounter the GT40 to give up on the victory royale. I controlled my speed down the 5th turn and used the curbs to pinpoint the apex on the next corner. I thought I managed the corkscrew very well, but I messed up, ate sand and allowed the GT40 to catch me with my guard down. That was a mistake quickly corrected by sheer amounts of power. 4, 3, 2 and brake! Turn and prepare to brake again. These markers are very useful tools to pinpoint when to brake before cornering. I re-challenged the corkscrew, and this time I managed to go through it safely. With only 2 wheels on the asphalt, I've gotten through the final corner of the lap and entered turn 4 after recording a personal best. The Andretti was true, and the markers were once again proved useful. This time, I gapped the GT40 instead. I smoothly took the corner before the corkscrew and cautiously navigated through the steep famed chicane. A rather smooth lap, and a personal best backed this up. On the 5th lap, the green on my tires began to fade, a sign to not push the car too much, lest risk losing too much grip and spinning out or understeer into a wall. I've gone past the Andretti, took turn 2 properly and braked in time before taking the next corner. That was a smooth experience down the corkscrew, and despite that minor hiccup on the final corner, I crossed the line in first after 7 minutes of driving. I have proven my dominance over the All-American Championship. Considering I came here with a full-blown race car, the prize surely be something that's similar on value, yes? What? Is this a joke? No offense to the first Corvette ever to be produced, but why? It's not even blue, so I clearly cannot use it for the History Car Cup? Such a shame. It is what it is. The adventure westward was fun, but I believe it was time to expedite progress deeper into the challenge, and so it was time to tackle the Turbo Challenge. The requirement to take part in this event is simple. Bring a car with a turbo system equipped. Unfortunately, this means I could not bring the NSX along as it is not compatible with turbos. But do you know what car that is compatible with a turbo system? That's right, the Subaru Impreza. Given that this is a professional tier event, I believe it is time to give the Impreza the upgrades it deserves. Okay, should be enough. With the car sufficiently upgraded, into the race of turbo sports I've gone. The first race was set on the Fuji Speedway, a whooping 140 points race. It has been a while since I got myself into such a challenge. Upon launching, I made quick work of half the grid, and before the turn, the Buick was taken care of. Now for the real challenge in the race, the Mazda RX-7. Surprisingly a cut above the rest of the grid, this Mazda would prove to be a notable obstacle between me and my victory. That was a rather dangerous take on the section leading to the 100R, but I believe in the car's 4-wheel drivetrain to keep it on its wheels. An accident averted, and on the 100R itself, I managed to overtake the FD. While the FD tried to resist, but it could only hang for so long before being cast into the silver medal. With the FD group behind, I took on the hairpin well, and despite the brief loss of lead on the Panasonic, that was not something I could not resolve in a short time, and soon was the time to take on the long straights. The problem with this section is, well, my Impreza and long straights, they do not mix. The car topped at 236 kilos, a weakness easily exploitable by rivals on the caliber of that FD. I was forced to play defensively, as one window of opportunity is what was all the FD needed to steal back first place. However, typical with my rivals, they are not precise in braking, a weakness I used to regain the golden trophy before turn 1. This time, on the section between turn 2 and 3, I opted for a less risky approach and not right on the grass. I controlled the throttle down to 100R and timely braked to gently approach the hairpin. Unfortunately, another blunder happened right before the Panasonic, almost ending my run then and there. While the worst possible case scenario was avoided, this gave the FD a chance to attack. A chance that the FD took on the straights, where my Impreza was most weak. A repeat from the previous lap. A rather odd series of events happened around the first corner, and ultimately, the FD came off the track, but he managed to almost immediately re-enter the track and continued the chase for the cup. On the 100R, our fight continued, and pressure was applied to yours truly on the hairpin. I still true and avoided making mistakes as I continued to lead the race. I opted to take the inside of the Panasonic and did my absolute best to defend my position until the very end. And in the end, it paid off. First place. Race number 2 of the event was set in Tokyo. This time, I stood to win 169 points, an absolute testament on the expected difficulty of the race. Like before, I immediately climbed to third, cutting through the traffic to meet the real challenge. In this race, the real challenge was offered from the Esprit. The Impreza understeered to the wall after a failed attempt to overtake the Lotus. I tried to overtake the Esprit from the inside. However, the Lotus was simply too far to fall victim to that maneuver. It was not until the very next turn I have managed to finally outpace the Esprit and claim first place. However, it was no time to rest as the gap between me and the White Lotus was practically non-existent. I carefully turned along the corner before the half-circle turn and smoothly took on the next one. I was rather optimistic as my Impreza was proven to be outmatched on the corners. My concern was a straight section, where like the FD from before, the Esprit will decimate me in sheer power. However, the Esprit had gone too wide and given me the opportunity to reclaim the trophy. On the final lap, the Esprit had gotten more aggressive and bumped my rear. However, this would count as a failed attempt of overtaking. It was not until the straights of the middle of the track I managed to keep my lead. I braked late in hopes to outmaneuver the Esprit. However, the car understeered again and as a result, drove both myself and the Esprit to the wall. Fortunately, I was on the other side, so instead of crashing alone, I used the Lotus as a cushion. This did not stop the Esprit to assert dominance on the half circle though. At the end of that section, I decided to tail the Esprit. While this was good to reduce wind resistance, I indulged in the slipstream for too long and crashed along with the Esprit like a set of trains in a roller coaster ride. The Green FC took advantage of this and stole second place. While this mess seemed to be bigger and bigger, on the final corner, I hatched a devious idea. Cushioning off the Esprit once more, I reclaimed my rightful position and sped off to victory. In the end of the Tokyo round, I managed to squeeze in yet another win. The third race was set on the high-speed ring, a Gran Turismo regional. After a smooth start, I quickly rose 2 positions, leaving the Evo and Eclipse behind. My car understeered to the railing, but this was a mistake I did not let myself repeat on the third turn. After that corner, I exploited their weakness in braking and overtook the red Lancia. I maintained the line in order to take care of the Audi, and on the full corner, I proved myself better than the other Impreza driver. While this seemed like an easy win, the real challenge came on the straights, where I had to defend despite the clear disadvantage of power. Huh, that's weird. Pretty sure I was on... Oh, there we go. Throughout the first corner, I managed to defend my crown. Hugged the insides of turn 2, controlled my throttle down turn 3, and executed a well thought out line on turn 4. On the final corner of the lap, I ensured the Impreza to not stray off the line I've set, and before I knew it, I was in the final lap. On the third lap, I took on the first corner rather smoothly and followed the proper racing line on turn 2. On the third turn, another play with the accelerator was done and avoided touching grass on turn 4. With these smooth, excellent executions throughout the track, my gap with the other Impreza grew, and that solidified my win over this race. The next race was set on New York. I tried squeezing through the Supra for 5th, but was not fast enough to utilize the gap. The roundabout was through, but I was still stuck in last place. Right before the section filled with 90-degree turns, I finally managed to put the Supra on last. I carefully navigated through the sharp turns and kept my rifles closed. The Lancia was overtaken, and I defended my post on the last 90-degree corner. However, my weakness on the straights was highlighted when even the Lancia overpowered my car. I might have retaken my post on the hairpin, but that was still a glaring weakness to cover. Lap 1 was done, and I was still on the lower half of the grid. This time, I managed to use the gap provided by the silver skyline and chase down the red Audi. I tried to navigate the 90-degree turns carefully, but turned too early in one of them. Not good, given my conditions. If I cannot outrace them on the straights, then I'll outperform them on the corners. Soon we'll all be on the final lap, and I'm still third. Something must be done about this. While I managed to threaten the Audi on the hairpin, the red car just sped off on the straights. I used the roundabout to my advantage and remained close to the Audi. While I still couldn't take second away from him, at the very least, I was close. At the entrance of the series of sharp turns, I gently overtook the Audi, and the match between Imprezas was played. However, the Impreza I'm facing clearly had a more advanced turbo system, as it outpowers my car on the straights. That's when another evil plan was hatched. This reckless maneuver sent both myself and the Impreza speeding to the wall, but I quickly recovered and re-entered the race before the Audi could gain more advantage from the chaos. I finished first, followed by the Audi, and lagging 6 seconds behind the white Impreza. I might or might not have created enemies from that race, but a win is a win. Next race. The last race was set on yet another Gran Turismo original, the Midfield Raceway. 171 points. If we measure difficulty from points, then this would be the hardest race of them all. Fitting, as this will be the last race to win in the Turbo Sports Challenge. With blazing acceleration and the opponents fighting amongst themselves, I managed to score second place before the first turn. On turn 3 and 4, I used the curbs to help me pinpoint the apexes of each turn so I could navigate through the section of the track in an ideal manner. Before the tunnel, I used the distance marks to time my brakes, and this consistent performance allowed me to get close and personal with the Mazda, which I ultimately overtook on the hairpin. On the straights, I had to play defensive once more as the FC predictably overpowers my Impreza. On the first set of corners, I managed to turn accordingly to the apexes, while the FC could not keep up as well around the corners. Like before, I used the distance marks to pinpoint when should I brake before the tunnel, a trick I also used to deal with the hairpin. Before the straights, I managed to create a small gap which could be instrumental in maintaining P1 given the sheer disadvantage I have at speed sections. On the last laps turn 3 and 4, I opted to let go of the gas instead of braking for less speed loss, hugged the insides around the tunnel, applied appropriate throttle control, and entered the hairpin from an advantageous position. On the straights, I booked it and finished first before the FC could slingshot through. And that's it. That was the final victory required to clear this event. The green Mazda was not very happy with the results though. Alright, let's see what kind of car they're giving me this time. Why? Is this a drift car? In a game where drift mode doesn't exist? I mean, if you drift in Gran Turismo 4, that's commendable, but I don't think I have any use for this car, True Blue Challenger or not. Bye.
Hey, remember Strakes? The barbarian driver who works for you? Yes. Do not expect sympathy from me. You are the one who unleashed him into Gran Turismo, after all. That's what I want to talk about. Wanna beat him? You've gained my attention. Come to my office tomorrow and bring your friends with you. I'll give you what you need.